Hello, everybody. I suspect I'm running a couple of minutes early on. I'm about 2 minutes early, so I won't start just yet. But for those of you who are already here, welcome aboard. I am going to get myself organized and prepared by making sure that you can see my screen. So let me just fandangle all of that stuff. Bear with me one moment. Just so that you know, throughout this evening's webinar, you will be able to send over any questions that you might have or comments that you might want to make using the questions box. So on your computer screen, however it is that you're seeing me right now, assuming you're not on a phone. If you're on a phone, you'll be able to hear me. You won't be able to see anything. Don't worry, it will be recorded this evening, and that will be available to you probably at some stage tomorrow. So if you just ping me over, if someone could just type in a hello in the questions box so that I know that you can hear me. Hello, Mary. Hello, Carissa. All right, good. So I know you can hear me, which is good. Hello, Sam. I am now going to share my screen with you. So I'd like to do that. Yes, that is fine. My computer's now asking me for permission. And that one. Okay, so let me close that and hit show. So just let me know whether or not you can see my screen, because apparently I am sharing, but what does that button do? I remember doing this last time, just pressing buttons going, what does that button do? No, you cannot. No. All right, let me have a look then. Let me have another look, because it's just told me that show my main screen. Oh, go to webinar, we'll share this screen. Yes, do that. I've got a feeling I've just hit the right button. Right, yes. Mary's saying yes. I think that is yes to the screen sharing. Yes, you can now. All right, perfect. So I'm just going to put my screen into full screen view. There we go. And I'm going to move my little GoToWebinar control panel over a little bit. So what I'll do is I'll just leave it to one side so that I can see as and when you might be pinging over messages, and I can then just sort of hop in and out of the presentation as required. In fact, no, I can't do that. So I've got to do one thing or the other. I'm either showing you the presentation or I'm looking at your comments. So let me tell you how it's going to work this evening. Here's what we're going to do. I am going to shrink down my GoToWebinar control panel, and I will check in on you guys at either various intervals, or quite possibly right at the very end instead. So if you've got some questions, just make sure you sort of type in what you're referring to when you ask the question, just in case I end up looking at it right at the very end of the presentation. So with all of that being said, let's get started right at the very beginning, shall we? So my name is Gemma Bailey. I'm the director of a little company called NLP for Kids. We are a children's franchise, and we work with children, young people, parents and teachers in order to help all of those groups really with their mental and emotional well-being. And unless you have been living under a rock for the last 5 years or so, you may not know that anxiety is one of the big things that is really putting lots of pressure on everybody, but obviously our interest is more so in young people. And so with that in mind, we've been doing quite a lot of work around providing people like you, so parents and professionals, with resources, be that content resources or physical resources, so that you can help the young people that you know to overcome, manage, and basically be able to hopefully not live with, but to get to a stage where they grow out of and move past high levels of anxiety. So we've had a few webinars, I think, already this year where I've talked about anxiety. So what I'm not going to do this evening is to go into the diagnostic side of it, you know, how it happens, why it happens, what it looks like, and so on. I'm sure bits of that will come up throughout the presentation today. But what we're actually showing you this evening is some different resources that you can use with your young people to really help them move past and combat anxiety. So in the work that I do with young people, sometimes this is in a one-to-one therapeutic environment, and sometimes it is within schools where I may be running workshops, and I have delivered the work that I do. So the different sorts of strategies and things that I use within NLP for Kids in both primary schools and in secondary schools. And throughout that time, you know, I could tell you, and I'm sure I will anyway, I could tell you lots about the variety of different NLP techniques that are applicable to helping a young person who is feeling the strain of anxiety. But at the same time, there's some just quite practical stuff that we can be doing with some resources that are not too tricky to come by, and hopefully by the end of the webinar this evening they'll be even easier to come by for you. Some of these are more appropriate for younger children, so from the age of, say, maybe even sort of 3 or 4 up to 10 years. Some of these I would say are less appropriate for older young people. So there'll be bits and pieces that I talk about this evening where you think, yeah, I can see that working with someone under the age of 10. Others where you'll think, actually, I can see this working for older young people as well. On the most part, it's applicable for all ages. It's just a case of how you use it and perhaps how you set it up. So we have put together a kit. Now, what I'm showing you this evening is a prototype. You are the first people to be introduced to this beyond our own office. So you are you're basically going to be the gate leaders, you know, you're going to be taking this forward, hopefully, and beyond that, we can then start to look at how we might build this kit further, how we might move it beyond the prototype stage and getting it into, you know, something that's really well branded and it, you know, just is very durable and something that you can take forward and use on a regular basis. So let me crack on and tell you what is in it, and most importantly, how you can use it. So I am going to talk to you about the kit itself right at the very, very end. You are, of course, not obliged to take up this offer in any way, shape or form. But what I would most definitely like you to do is certainly think about the different elements of it and how you might be able to use them within the work that you do or with the young people that you are taking care of, because there is going to be something in here of value for you without question. It's just a case of then making sure that you put whatever that is into action. I will make sure that I wrap this up tonight by around about 10 to 9 at the latest, so that I give us a little bit of time to address any questions that you might have, and yeah, to just kind of pick up the thread of any other conversations that we might need to look at. So without further ado, let me get cracking. All right, so the very first thing that we have in our anxiety kit is a little diary. Now, there are some known benefits around journaling, and what we've actually got, which you would be sent over to you should you purchase the kit, are a series of questions that are really good for helping you to explore mindfulness and just really getting you to think in a slightly more positive way. Now, it's not instant success stuff. This is something that you need to commit to at least 3 times a week. So let me tell you a little bit about the benefits of journaling. So it is proven that when you are journaling on a regular basis, it reduces stress. Now, that to me sounds like quite a flippant thing to say. So I've actually done a little bit of research into this over the last few weeks to see, all right, well, is there actually any evidence of this? And actually there is. People have done studies around what happens to someone who gets into a habit of regular journaling, and it transpires that it lowers their blood pressure. It has positive effects on overall health and immunity, but even things like it starts to improve liver function. I have no idea why that works or how that works, but this is what the studies are saying. So I can definitely testament to the idea that journaling reduces stress, because having used it in my own life, it really works. Now, the other thing that I do when I am journaling is I make sure that I set myself particular questions that I'm going to ask. And these are some of the questions that, I wanted to sort of mention to you about today, because what we want to do is to not just have a opportunity to download at the end of the day for our young people, and whether that's them writing a few bullet points, whether that is you writing it for them, whether that is you writing it with them, whether this is something that they do independently, what we're going to start to notice is that as a result of having that opportunity to not just download, but to reflect on the day through a more positive lens than it perhaps even was at the time of that day happening, that we're going to see an increase in positive states and overall a better sense of well-being. So these questions that we use as prompts for a progress diary, for a journaling diary like this, improve mindfulness and growth mindset. So let me just mention a little bit about the difference between those two things. Mindfulness is a sense of feeling like you are more in the moment than you are in your head. And the reason why journaling is useful for that is because when you have had a day of stuff and you go to bed and you start thinking about all of the stuff that happened that day, you are in your head. You're not actually having the outside world experience of laying there in your bed and feeling the sensations of falling asleep and the melatonin kicking in, all of those wonderful things that should start to happen as you fall into a sleepy, dreamy state. So as a result of journaling, we're able to get that information out of the way and then actually spend our time in the moment. With growth mindset, this is where these good quality questions come in. So these are questions that get you to reflect on things, but to actually stretch your brain in how you look back on what has happened. So for example, we know that not every day is going to be a 100% positive day. So a growth mindset question could be, what would you do differently tomorrow if the same things had happened that had happened today? Or how would you like to improve things going forward? All of these get you thinking a little bit outside of the box. So in NLP, we sometimes talk about blue sky thinking, and that's really where you step out of what your current thinking state is, your current parameters, and you go beyond that and say, and what else is there? What else is there for me to consider here, which maybe if I hadn't have asked myself that question, I wouldn't have bothered considering. So journaling is really good for helping us to stretch our brains and for helping our young people to not just see things from a different perspective, but from a wider perspective as well. Journaling can help to regulate emotions. I'm sure you have all by now had the experience of downloading onto a piece of paper or into an email, and you just need to get it out of your system sometimes. Again, it's that prevention of busy brain from happening. We don't want to have our young people caught up in a state where they've got the equivalent of a racetrack of thoughts happening in their head. And with every Formula One car, it's a different thought that's whizzing through their brain and spinning them around in circles. It's a good idea to get that out of your mind so that you get better perspective on it, but also you can at that stage let it go. You don't have to remember to think about it. You don't have to remember to consider it because you've got it down on paper. So it's easier for your mind to just let that thing go and for you to move on. In addition, journaling has benefits for memory, and that's your memory comprehension. So what you actually remember and the capacity, so how much you are able to remember. Now, I don't know the science around why that is, but definitely something happens. And I think it has probably something to do with the fact that you are seeing your thoughts in front of you. Perhaps helps it to stick, because although we know that people learn in different ways, and some people are auditory, some people are kinesthetic, etc., etc. Actually, most of us go to visual first. Before we do anything else, we all go visual first. You need to be able to see things in your mind in order to be able to recall them properly. This is why when you've been on holiday and you come home, you still know what your house looks like, because you have a visual representation of your front door, so that you're able to spot it out amongst the street full of other front doors that there might be available in front of you. So our visual memory is one that we go to first, and I suspect that that is part of the reason why journaling helps us with our memory skills, because we're not just thinking our thoughts, we're also seeing them down in written format as well. And there's going to be some kinesthetic element in there, particularly if you're like me and you still like a bit of old, paper and pens. Of course, that's not going to be the right thing for all of our young people. Some of them might prefer to do this journaling on a tablet or on their iPhone or whatever else they might want to choose from a technology perspective. But in my opinion, there is something very different that happens when we are writing. Now, there has been some studies that show in a learning environment, which I appreciate is slightly different to what I'm talking about here, but I do think it's still relevant. In a learning environment, if you were, for example, sitting in a lecture, and you perhaps had the good fortune of having a MacBook Air in front of you, like I have right now, and you wanted to make notes on what the lecturer was saying, and you've got a relatively quick typing speed, you will be able to take down almost all of what the lecturer is saying. But studies have shown that you will not remember it, because the brain is not filtering the information in the same way. Now, if your friend is sat next to you and they do not have the good fortune of having a MacBook Air, and they instead just have their good old-fashioned Bic biro and their notepad, and they are also taking notes, they will have fewer notes, because obviously they can't write at the same speed that someone else might be typing. But what happens is that your brain has to be more clever, it has to filter better to decide what information is the most relevant to actually write down. And that causes you to think more about what is being said, and it causes more of the information to stick in your brain. Now, my belief is that when we are journaling, if we do it in a paper and pen format, we're probably running a similar sort of strategy, whereby we think more about what it is that we're writing. So it pushes us more towards that mindfulness and growth mindset, so that we're really considering what it is that we're saying. Whereas we could still do journaling on a piece of technology, but because of the speed with which these young people are able to type things, it might mean that they're not actually thinking through quite as much about what it is that they're writing. Now, some of you guys that are listening now might be teachers. You might be in a position where, you're perhaps giving them homework to do, and there is times when that happens on a piece of technology, and there are times when it happens in a written format. So I'd actually be really interested in hearing your feedback on my theory on that one, to see if you notice a difference in quality. I'm not talking about, obviously, some people have shoddy handwriting, so I'm not talking about like the quality of the presentation, but just in terms of the quality of what is written. Is it different when you have a piece of written work versus when you have a piece of typed work? Perhaps there is something in this theory that having to physically write it down causes us to be just a bit smarter about what it is that we're actually writing. So I've said this one probably a few times already. When we are journaling, it helps to put our problems into better perspective, because what it does is it stops it from being a concept in our mind, and it turns it into a bit of writing on a piece of paper. And there is immense value in doing that with problematic scenarios. So we're not saying that this journaling needs to be all rainbows and sunshine. It needs to be honest. We're going to be educating our young people about the benefits of being honest about how they are thinking, how they are feeling, reframing that and seeing it in a more positive light where appropriate, but to be honest about how it was that they thought and how they felt at the time. And in doing this, we begin to take control over the problem. We begin to enforce power over it instead of it having power over us, because it suddenly turns into black letters on a white page. And that's it. And then you start to see the perspective of, well, actually, it's only in my mind, it's only in my imagination that it's really given potency, and it's really given emotion, and it's really given its power. But actually, if I just write this down on a piece of paper, what is it? You know, it's just a piece of paper. If someone came along in 10 years' time and picked this up and read it, maybe they would think something of it, but maybe they wouldn't. You know, it would just be a little book. So we're going to be able to put problems into much better perspective as a result of getting things down out of their head and onto their paper. And we've said already, they're in line with reducing stress, reducing anxiety. There are going to be long-term improvements to physical health as well. Stress, anxiety, depression, all of those sorts of mental health issues place enormous amounts of stress on the physical body. And I was actually thinking about something earlier today. So I start hypnotherapy for kids training this Saturday until Tuesday. And when that happens, when I've got training coming up, I start sort of thinking about little conversations that I might want to have, or different concepts or ideas that I might want to share. And I was thinking about how our brain doesn't have any nerve endings. So you might get a headache, but you can't actually feel your brain. So this is why it's very difficult for surgeons to perform brain surgery when they need to do it, because, you know, it's difficult to, you don't see pain in the brain. Now, here's where I'm going with this. If it's the case that we know that certain things cause strain upon the body. So, for example, and this is really what I was thinking about for my training this weekend. For example, if you did far too much exercise, if you put too much physical strain on your body's going to let you know about it. Your body's going to let you know about it because it will ache. You might pull a muscle, and so that's going to hurt. Maybe things will start to creak or crack or tense up or tighten. There are all of these things that your body does to send you the pain signal to say, you have pushed me too far this time, enough is enough. Now, because our brain doesn't have nerve endings, when our brain is pushed to the limits, it doesn't, you're not going to feel it in your actual brain, because your brain can't, it doesn't have pain signals in there because there's no nerve endings. So what your brain has to do is to communicate via the body. So it's going to start sending signals out to other places in the body to say, listen guys, I'm not happy up here, all is not well, you're taking the mickey now and I've had enough. Because your brain, aside from perhaps feeling really full, or maybe, you know, having those overwhelming thoughts, it's otherwise going to have to send the message that it's feeling overwhelmed and overworked via the body. So this is why with things like stress, anxiety, and depression, there will very often be physical symptoms that come with them. And it's not because there's anything wrong with the body, it's because there's something wrong in the brain. So we need to start looking out for, well, what are these sorts of physical symptoms that are occurring that actually might not be the asthma, might not really be the eczema, but has perhaps got something to do with this anxiety issue that I've been suspecting. And if I tackle that anxiety issue, what then can I start to measure within the physical health to see that things are beginning to improve? And one of the best things about journaling is that you can look back on what you wrote when you first got started and you can see your progress. And that's one of the things, even though I am not journaling consistently at the moment, I'll be honest, I very often use Facebook as my journal. But even when I'm not journaling consistently, I like to go back and see where I was this time last year. And again, it's amazing to sort of look back on the old problems and go, oh, is that it? Well, and to really sort of see how things have moved on since there, or how the things that I really thought of as a big problem back then were really not a big problem back then whatsoever. And some of you may be Facebook users like me, although you may not use it in quite the same way that I do. But if you do, you might also notice that sometimes there's that time hop thing where it sort of pops up with a message and says, here's something that you did 3 years ago. Here's something that you talked about 4 years ago. So I quite like to see those because it lets me know that I'm moving forward in my life and that, you know, perhaps some bad things have come to an end or some important things that were just beginning have really blossomed by now. So journaling's really beautiful in that way because we can look back on it later and we can see, you know, we can see how it is that we've progressed and evolved in that time. And that's really important for our young people to do, because the thing with being young is time feels like forever. Obviously, by the time you get to our age, you know, it's always Christmas because the year flies by so quickly. But you probably remember the experience of being much younger and thinking, you know, next month is forever away. Today is just like colossal. You know, it felt like time was moving at a different speed. It literally feels like you move time zones the older that you get. So to be able to sort of look back and to see, oh yeah, this is where I was before, also really helps to give them that perception of time as well, in order to increase their sense of progress that they are making. All right, I'm going to do a quick check-in now. Let me do a quick check-in before I start waffling on about ball games. So, nope, you're all good. All right, smashing. So let me crack on. I'm talking ball games. So this is the other thing that is within our kit. I'm first of all going to give myself a little pat on the back because you've no idea how tricky it was to take a photograph of this ball with the smiley face pointing upwards. For some reason, it always wanted to roll away so that the smiley face was pointing down. And I took about 15 photographs of this ball today. So we're going to talk about ball games. Now, again, you could look at this and go, well, I've got a tennis ball at home. How is this possibly useful for a young person with anxiety? It is. Now, I'm not going to say that all of these things are, it's necessary to use them all in conjunction with each other. I'll certainly say there's going to be more benefits if you do. But even if you just did one thing, you're going to see some improvements here. Let's talk about ball games. So there are obvious things that we are able to gain from playing a game of catch. For example, it improves timing because you need to be coordinated enough to catch the ball at the right moment so that it doesn't smack you in the face. Now, where we have young people who are anxious, distracted, maybe even, you know, we're working with some children here who are on the spectrum in some way. These are all things that are going to really stretch their skills, but it gets them in the moment. And that's what's important about this. It gets them out of their head and concentrating on what's going on in the moment. And it gets them to have a better perception of being here in that exact moment, right here, right now. And that's where our mindfulness comes back in again. When you are playing a game of catch, you have to concentrate and you have to be in the moment whilst you're doing it. So we're going to see an improvement in timing and of course an improvement in things like hand-eye coordination. Now that in itself, we go, well, that's just normal child development, Gemma. Well, of course it is, but what we can start to see from here as a result of improving things like hand-eye coordination is you get small wins. And when you get small wins, you start to feel better about yourself. I don't know when you last played a game of catch, But if you've ever played a game of catch with a younger person or someone who is just not in the moment to start with, what you notice is that you throw the ball and you can't get a, what's it called, like a back and forth going. I can't think of the word for it, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, because someone always drops the ball. And if you've ever done it where you count, so you throw, catch, they throw, you catch, you throw, they catch, and so on. If you ever count the number of throws and catches that you get, maybe starting to put some little curve balls in there as well, such as you have to clap your hands before you catch the ball, or you have to throw with your left hand if you're right-handed, or you have to catch with your right hand if you're left-handed, or something like that. So as soon as we start adding some complexities into it, it becomes more challenging. And so we'll often see that the ball gets dropped. But eventually we get back into this rally of it going back and forth again. And that's where the hand-eye coordination is kicking in. We're going to be seeing that timing once again is improved, that being in the moment is starting to happen, and that we've got some small wins going on. And sometimes you just need a day where they've had a small win to turn it around and get them feeling better, to get them calmed down about the fact of going to bed and getting up and going back to school the next morning. We are also going to mention here something very important in the world of NLP, and that is high performance states. Now, a high performance state is something that we use in a process called anchoring in NLP. So I'm going to give you a very brief introduction to NLP, what it is, how it works, and so on. Anchoring is when we take ourselves into usually a positive emotional state, and we connect it with some sort of external trigger. Now, you have these set up naturally already. For example, when you hear a particular song and it reminds you of a particular holiday, and you get back all the good feelings that you had associated with that holiday, that would be an anchor. So the trigger is the sound of the music, and the internal feeling hopefully is one of happiness and relaxation associated with your holiday. So what we do in NLP is we look to create kind of false anchors, if you like, because we want to use them to help young people to get into a positive state really quickly. So we might ask them to remember a happy memory from the past while simultaneously squeezing their fingers together. And eventually the brain starts to learn. So after just a few rounds of practicing, the brain begins to learn that there's a correlation between when the squeezing of the feelings is happening, the feeling of the feelings is happening, and the squeezing of the fingers is happening. So it starts to link the two together. It then means that later on, they can squeeze their fingers together and bring back all of the positive emotions. Now, what lots of NLPers won't tell you is that when we have a child who suffers with anxiety, is that very often they may struggle to come up with a positive memory in order for us to do the anchoring process. In fact, what can happen is that they may come up with a positive memory, we go through the entire anchoring process, and then suddenly they say, oh, actually, that was also the day that my dog died. And you realize that this positive memory is linked to something negative, and that's called a polluted anchor. So the best kind of anchors occur when someone is in a good emotional state right there and then in that exact moment in time. But that can be challenging when you're working with someone who's in an anxious or stressed state. They're not necessarily going to fall into a fit of giggles in order for us to do the anchoring process. So what we do instead is we very simply play a game of catch with a squishy ball like the one that you see here. By the way, it's a squishy ball, which means it's also good for stress relief as well. But I haven't included that, but just so you know, it's a squishy ball that comes in the kit. So with our game of catch, when we reach that state where we've got the rally going, we are passing back and forth, we're maybe throwing in some little curveball complications and we're coping with them. We're catching with our left hand. We're clapping before the ball lands in our hands. We're doing all of these wonderful, elaborate things, and we've still got this wonderful rally going. What happens then is that your brain enters into the state of flow. Now, we've all experienced a state of flow before, and you have all seen children in the state of flow. The state of flow is where your brain is in high levels of concentration, but simultaneously feeling relaxed, and you are really sort of opening up some creative spheres in your mind. You know, a child who is engrossed in following their Lego model design, who doesn't hear that the television got switched off in the background. This is you when you are writing your presentation and the ideas are coming and they're coming and they're coming and they're coming. That's your state of flow. So this is also known as a high performance state. And a simple game of catch with maybe a few, you know, elaborate curveballs thrown into it just to really stretch our brains helps us and our young person to enter into a high performance state. And then we can go in with anchoring. Then we can get them to squeeze their fingers together. So we pause the game, squeeze your fingers, grab that state whilst it's there. And what's beautiful about this state is it's not about feeling giggly and happy. It's actually about feeling centered and grounded and calm and concentrated and in control all at the same time. So it's a really beautiful one to capitalize on. All right, so other benefit of ball games is the social skills and the bonding that comes with this. Now, I've got like a smiley face squishy ball here on the screen, but I'm telling you now that I could still sit and play a game of catch with the grown-ups who work with me in my office. And that happens sometimes. That happens sometimes. And sometimes someone will, you know, just chuck something across the room that somebody's asked for, and we'll cheer if they catch it, and we'll boo if they drop it. You know, there is something about a simple game of catch that really brings people together. I found a photograph the other day in an old photo album of when I must have been about, I would hazard a guess at about 4 or 5 years old. It's very difficult to tell with me because I've always been tiny. When I was in reception, I only just had hair and I still look like a toddler. But I found this photograph, and in the photograph with me is my granddad Bailey. Now, my granddad passed away when I was about 11 years old. So obviously I've had a significant period of time where he was not part of my life. But that photograph took me right back to the exact moment that that photo was taken. And I was in the back garden with my granddad, and it was a Sunday afternoon, and I was bored, and he said, let's go outside and play catch. And he found an old tennis ball, like a sweaty, smelly old tennis ball. And I'll tell you what he did. He got a 10p coin. So do you remember how big the old 10p coins were, kind of back in the early 80s? And he put it on the ground in between us. And he said, we're not just going to play catch. What you have to do is you have to throw the ball down on the ground so it bounces off of the 10p that's standing in between us. And then I have to catch it. And if both of those things happen, you get to keep the money. How's that for an incentive to learn? Like, he was a smart cookie. And this was just a really nice experience between the two of us. Like, I'd completely forgotten about that day, and as soon as I saw that picture, it brought it back, and it really was like a really nice bonding experience. So we're going to see, as a result of a simple ball game, that we've got some bonding and some social skills coming into this, and all of these things are anxiety busting, because when we are communicating better, when we are connecting better with other people, anxiety levels begin to go down. All right, so positive one here for anxiety, of course, is we're relieving stress. And we know that if our young people are feeling less stress, they are going to be less inclined to gravitate towards feelings of feeling anxious. Sportsmanship. Now, this is an important one, because I think now and I'm going to generalize a little bit here, but I think now children are spending more time being entertained by technology than they are being entertained by things like board games, ball games, and things that require interaction with other people and having the sense of what it is to lose, what it is to drop the ball, what it is to have to be the one to go next door and knock on the door and say, I'm really sorry, my ball's gone in your garden. And all of these things are resilience developing. All of these things are important for learning about failure and how to overcome it. All of these things are beneficial for helping to create robust young people who are less prone to experiencing anxiety and who have a more realistic perception of what the real world looks like. Because when you get out there in the real world, when you start working and you go out into the workplace, if you fail at something, if you screw up, you can't just switch it off and on again and start and pretend that it didn't happen and then keep going until you get your little dopamine kick from winning against the computer or moving up to the next level, because real life's not like that. Real life's a lot more like a ball game. When the ball rolls away from you because the wind blew, at every opportunity you went to try and pick it back up again. In real life, you have to interact with people. You have to learn the skills of how to fail and get over it very quickly. So this is another reason why I think ball games are generically a brilliant idea, but also I think they are good for building resilience, and that is something that anxious children need more of. They are also brilliant for exercise. I'm not going to harp on about technology too much here because I'm probably going to mention it again before this webinar is over, even though I'm using technology to communicate with you today. But again, we've got lots of kids using tech, not physically moving as much. And the thing with anxiety is when someone is in an anxious state, their body is releasing adrenaline. And adrenaline is the drug, the chemical within your body that your body creates naturally that enables you to run and to get out the way of the oncoming lions and tigers or bears. So it's your flight or fight response that is where all of your adrenaline comes from. Now, if we have someone who, let's say worst case scenario, they're already in an anxious state, that means they've already got adrenaline happening in their body. Now, we've got a choice. They either use that adrenaline up in a productive way, for example, doing some exercise, or they don't. And then it just stays in the body. And then it starts to turn into things like cortisol, which is a real stress type hormone that puts us into a very bad headspace. It really tightens up our muscles and causes our bodies to feel very tense. So let's introduce some exercise here so that even if they're already feeling anxious, as a result of doing some physical movement, they're going to be able to use up that excess adrenaline and then still be able to get a decent night's sleep at the end of the day. I've already said this quite a lot, so I'm not going to say it again, but ball games are an excellent alternative to technology. All right, let me check in, just see if there's any questions, comments, etc. before I move on to the next chunk. No, we're good. All right. I hope you're all enjoying webinars so far. And I know I have this habit when I'm doing webinars where I just kind of go and I just throw so much information at you. So don't worry, this is being recorded and I should have the recording out to you by tomorrow. So if you haven't been able to sort of take note of everything that I'm saying here today, then please be assured that you will be able to hop back in, listen to this at a later stage, and maybe even slow down the speed with which I'm speaking so that you can get all of the information out of me. All right, so let's talk about progress charts. This progress chart that we have here for you is a wipe clean one, which means that when you use it in conjunction with the dry white pen that we'll send out to you, you can just easily clean it off, so it's reusable basically. So progress charts, obviously otherwise be known as a reward chart, and you can certainly use it in that way. But my thinking with this one is more about managing progress levels. So not just saying, yeah, you were great today, because we need to talk a little bit about how that ties in with anxiety as well. And I'll come to that in just a moment. But actually, we want to be thinking about, what do I want to achieve by a certain point in time in the future? What's realistic and within my power for how it is that I want to be changing and improving in the future? So a progress chart is really good for setting new goals. And those of you that know a little bit about NLP, you know all about setting SMART goals, making it simple, specific, measurable, meaningful, acting as if you've already achieved it, making it achievable, taking responsibility, making it realistic, getting your timings right, and making it stated in the positive, so you're moving towards something. But for children, that's like quite a large concept in order for them to take that on board. So something like a progress chart, we could maybe write down in the the second grey row, third box in, a certain goal that we want to achieve by the time we get to that box. And then every box that we're working through up until that point is moving us forward toward our goal. So you've got the days of the week across the top there, so that you can easily map out what it is that you want to be achieving. So progress charts are really useful for setting goals, but also for your young person, if they're very young, for actually seeing the days ticking by and then moving forward toward the thing that they want to be achieving. Now, as I said, you could use this as a reward chart, so it could be moving toward the reward that you want to have, and we need to have, you know, certain amount of good days, ticking things off, or just, here's how, it's going to come up again, but here's how I don't want you to use this. I don't want you to use this as a, you didn't get anxious today. That's not the goal here. It's great if they don't get anxious, but I also want to be delicate about circumstances, I guess. And what we're looking to do here is to notice what they're doing well, rather than where they might be not doing quite so well yet. So providing that you can see that they've given it their best that day, then that's still progress, and that's the main thing. So because we're going to be setting these goals, we can see what the goal is, we can see ourselves working towards it, we're going to have an increase in motivation. For some young people, when they suffer with challenges like anxiety, they become quite disheartened. They feel stuck. They've perhaps tested out a certain number of different ways of doing things before, particularly if they've been suggested by mum or dad. They may have found that those things didn't work for them because they were suggested by mum or dad, and not because the ideas were useless in any way, but just because, you know, sometimes we just reject what our parents are saying because it's our parents. So what we want to be able to do is to get their motivation levels back up, and to give them an opportunity to have a bit more faith in themselves and to see themselves moving forwards. This is going to encourage positive communication. As a result of using something like a progress chart, you need to start interacting with each other. You need to start asking good quality questions in order to be able to complete the progress chart. Now, sometimes if you have a young person who comes home from school and you say, how was your day? And they go, fine. You go, what did you do today? I can't remember. Suddenly, when there's a progress chart involved, the information starts coming back to them a little more readily and easily. Very often, they can't remember what they did that morning. And so it's about asking questions around, did you do this today? And then that will prompt them to think, no, I didn't, or no, I didn't because I did this, or yes, I did do that today. So we just need to be asking questions that dig a little deeper. But the progress chart is going to help you both to stay on track with that. It's also a source of immediate feedback. We're not reflecting on what happened, you know, a week ago and harboring over things that have gone horribly wrong a couple of days before. This is, how was it today? We're looking at today. We're living in the moment. We're taking it back to that mindful state of being right here, right now, focusing on where we are today and what today is doing. So you visually get to see the progress, which is important, and we've mentioned that already. And it also helps develop their understanding of the future. Now, I've mentioned time a little bit already because time does work differently in the minds of the young. And they don't have to be very young for time to work differently. You know, even your young people who are in secondary school, time is working in a different way to their brain to what it does in the adult brain. So we need them to be able to see that the future is going to happen, and this is when it's going to happen. This is us moving towards that future point in time. The best thing about progress charts is it gives them accountability for their behavior. Now, with anxiety, I'm just going to give you a little snippet into the world of what I do here. So when I go into school, if I'm working with children who have been flagged as anxious, I get them to complete a special questionnaire, which is called the RCADS. So it's the Revised Children's Anxiety and Depression Scale. And it's a series of 20 questions. And throughout that list of 20 questions, it helps to formulate a score for how anxious and depressed they are. And it measures anxiety, depression, and then anxiety and depression together. I have noticed that when I go into school and I'm working with children who are flagged as anxious, that when I get them to go through this questionnaire, I would say at least 80% of the time, they are not anxious. They are not suffering with anxiety. The scoring system goes up to 80. If they are somewhere around 70, they're on the clinical threshold for anxiety, and 70 and above, then they're actually going to be clinically anxious and depressed. I have done this scoring system with children in an Overcome Anxiety workshop where they were identified by teaching staff as being the most anxious children, and they were scoring under 20. Like I remember scores of 15 and 16. And then feeding back to the deputy head teacher and saying, these children are not anxious, but what you might have is a behavioural problem. So what I have noticed is that sometimes we are finding it difficult to tell the difference between anxiety and behaviours. And so our progress chart is going to help us to take accountability for those behaviours. So, and that's your behaviours as well as your child's behaviour. But it's going to really get us to start thinking in a more considered way about, is this anxiety or is this a behavioural reaction? Because here's the thing, let's say that 80% of it is behaviour and 20% of it is anxiety. For the anxiety part, absolutely, we need to address that, and we need to give them all of the help and support that they need to overcome that. But if we've got 80% of it that's behaviour, like that's 80% of the problem solved by starting to acknowledge and address the poor behaviour that might be happening. So our progress chart is helpful for us then. We're working within a timeline, and I think there may be a question. So let me just ping over here and see what we've got. All right. Small comment, progress makes perfect is now more commonly used as progress makes permanent. Ooh, thank you, Mary. Although I don't know, I think maybe for our younger people, we might need to do explaining of the word permanent. You could cut out, could you repeat the 20 questions questionnaire, please? Oh yeah, so it's the RCADS. So it's the Revised Children's Anxiety and Depression Scale. You can, if you Google it, you'll find it, and it's downloadable for free off of the internet. So, and that one is used in scoring with statisticians to be able to, you know, properly measure anxiety and depression levels in children. So feel free to go and grab that one. All right, so gosh, I'm looking at the time going, I've got quite a bit to cover. Okay, stick them up. So here's what we've got. We've got some stickers. Now, I need to tell you a story. before I get into this, I need to tell you a story. I would, up until, I don't know, maybe a few weeks back, I would hand on heart have said, if you're going to be using stickers, these are your primary school age children. Like, stickers are not cool when you get to secondary school. Nobody wants a freaking sticker when they're 15 years old. That is not okay. But let me tell you, in our office, we were talking about creating our own stickers for our NLP for Kids certificates. So these are like holographic, shiny, embossed, like mega stickers. Like they're the poshest of posh stickers, and they cost a small fortune. And when I was talking to the team about it, people were getting so excited about these stickers. So I didn't tell them, but I ordered an additional reel of stickers. And I've always been thinking, so this is me as an employer, I'm always thinking, what do I do to incentivize my team? How do I make sure that, you know, they're spending adequate amounts of time doing the things that they're supposed to be doing in the office? And we've done things like lunches out. We did like an escape room as a team building thing. Sometimes I'll buy them sweets, buy them donuts, buy them biscuits, let them finish early. You know, I'm always thinking, how do I incentivize my team? Anyway, I decided that new incentive was going to be holographic stickers. And I didn't tell them. They arrived in the post. And then one of the members of the team, some of you will have spoken to, her name is Alicia. She had spent a significant amount of time talking to someone about the NLP for Kids franchise and was fortunate enough to make a sale. And that sale was enough to cover the cost of her wages for the month. So she got a shiny sticker from me. And I even got them little books with each month marked out in the book, so that each month they can see how many stickers they can collect for doing the good work that they do. Well, you would have thought that I'd given her £1,000 check. When I gave her this shiny sticker, she had tears in her eyes. And Megan, who also works in the office, said, "You really know how to motivate us, don't you? We are just a bunch of children who like shiny stickers." So I honestly would have said to you a few weeks back, stickers 100% primary school, but I'm telling you now, there is something about getting a sticker that just, it still does it for the grown-ups. So it is a badge of honor. Now, I know this is a little tiny screen, but our stickers work like this. So the top row says marvelous, then it's brilliant, fabulous, fantastic, wonderful, excellent, and what's the last one? Outstanding. So here's what I do when I'm in school and I've got to the end of a workshop or I've got to the end of a session, and I say, do you know what? You've done brilliantly today. You're going to have a sticker, but you need to tell me, are you wonderful, brilliant, fabulous, fantastic, wonderful, excellent, or outstanding? And then they have to say, I'm excellent. And then you give them the sticker. And so there's something in there about the affirmation of saying, I am this, that I think makes it work really beautifully. But I'm going to come to affirmations in just a moment. So here's what we're doing. And this takes me back to something I mentioned in the previous slide. We are going to be rewarding effort with our stickers. We are not rewarding results. So if we have a child who has had a colossal anxiety meltdown that day, it doesn't mean they didn't get a sticker. If they really did their best that day and you really saw that they were trying and putting their best foot forward, it just happened to not work out, they still get a sticker. So we're rewarding effort rather than achievement with these, for the sake of, overcoming anxiety. To an extent, we're supporting choice theory by using stickers, because we can use stickers, for want of a better word, for bribery. So we can say, listen, you can choose to go to the party today, give it your best shot, get yourself a sticker because you made the effort, or you can choose not to. You can skip the party, stay at home under the duvet, but you're not going to get a sticker for that because I'm not seeing the effort there. So we're giving choice. Affirmation, I've already mentioned. So yeah, there is this affirmation of I am one of these brilliantly positive keywords that we've got written up here. It encourages consistent behavior, and it encourages you to be consistent in offering the reward. And your young people are going to support you in providing that consistency, because what they will do is they will remind you that they need their sticker. And then that's going to remind you to give them the praise and acknowledgement that they need that day. The other great thing with these is these are a low investment incentive. And I always like the low investment incentive. Now, what I mean by low investment incentive is these don't cost much. You know, you can make someone's day with a sticker. I'm telling you now, if I can avoid paying for my whole team to go to an escape room for the day and losing a day of business and give them a sticker instead, they're getting stickers for the rest of their working lives now. So this is a low investment incentive and it works. We can use these for behavior management as well. I already alluded to bribery there, but if we have already identified that perhaps some of these symptoms of anxiety might not quite be anxiety and might instead be driven by behavior, perhaps not all of the time, but certainly some of it, then in those instances, we want to be managing behavior by using the sticker as a, this is something you can get or not get today. If this behavior continues, then I can guarantee you won't be getting your sticker. All right, next thing is a little puzzle piece. And this is a puzzle piece with a special message that you're going to customize for the young person that you've got in your mind. Let me tell you about what's important with these. I do something like this for myself. Now you're going to think I'm bonkers at this point, but I'm telling you now, this actually really means something to me. So I have a flat, I have a little property in Bulgaria, and a few times a year I will head over to Bulgaria, and sometimes I end up working and not actually enjoying the place, but sometimes I actually get to relax and unwind a little bit. And over the last couple of years, things in my personal life have been quite challenging, with poorly family members and sort of people going into hospitals and hospices and all sorts of things like that going on in my immediate family, and sort of taking on lots of responsibility that I never used to have in the past. So when I've been going over to Bulgaria, there seemed to be this pattern. It was like my mum and sister were in cahoots with each other, where as soon as I'd land in my little quiet, relaxing hideaway, I'd get a phone call to say, your mum's been rushed into hospital. Very shortly followed by, your sister's been rushed into hospital. And sometimes they're in the same hospital at the same time, just on different floors. So what I started to do was, at the end of my trip, because I knew that, you know, I hadn't got the break that I really wanted and needed back then, is I would write my future self a little note. And the last time I went back to Bulgaria, I'd completely forgotten that I'd done this. So I walked in and, you know, switched all the lights on and got the water running and all of that stuff you have to do when you haven't been there for a while. And then I saw that there was this folded up piece of paper on the table, and I opened up the folded up piece of paper, and it was a note from Gemma from the past. And the note said, listen, I know you had a bit of a tough time when you were here before, but this time I really want you to give it your best at taking some time out and relaxing. So I've left you a beer in the fridge, and the bed sheets are all clean and folded, and they're tucked away in the cupboard. And there were all these little things that I'd obviously done for myself on the last day that I was there last time. And it said, check in the microwave, there's another little treat in there waiting for you. And I'd totally forgotten that I'd done this stuff, and I opened up the microwave and there was a box of Ferrero Rocher hidden in there, and it was quite lovely. So this little note actually really like perked me up and sort of made my day that day. So a little special message, whether it is from your past self to your future self or from someone that you love, can make all the difference. Have you ever stuck a post-it note in your child's lunchbox or your loved one's lunchbox, just letting them know that you hope they're having a good day and that you love them very much? You know, it really puts a smile on people's faces, and that's what our jigsaw puzzle piece is all about. So for our younger people, it can offer them a little bit of reassurance, or we can use it to return them to a particularly good memory. So they can keep this in their pocket, they can keep this in their book bag, and when they need to, they just take a look at it and they see the little personalized message, and it can take them back to that little memory. It creates a sense of connection. So if you have a young person who has separation anxiety, or anxiety about being away from home, then this can help kind of tie them back. It's almost like the invisible cord that holds you together so that it creates that sense of connection for them. It's a practical hug without actually being there to do the hugging. So it's a way of, you know, kind of saying, I'm here, I'm still with you, even though I'm not actually there with you. And because it's a puzzle piece, it actually works as quite a nice little metaphor. So a metaphor is a story within a story. And for me, a puzzle piece is saying, this is just one part. This is one part of what's going on. It's not the bigger picture. So whatever you're experiencing in this moment right now is just one part of you. It's not the whole of you. There's a whole lot more to you. This anxiety right now is maybe at best 3% of you, but you haven't got anxiety in your big toe right now. You haven't got anxiety in the tips of your hair or in your teeth. Your teeth are not feeling anxious right now. This anxiety is just a small piece of a much bigger puzzle. It helps to remind you that you are a survivor. You are going to get through this. This little puzzle piece can end up getting taken around here, there, and everywhere. This puzzle piece goes through the turbulent times with you, and it is always there to remind you that you survived it before and you're going to survive it again. All right, so now I've got a couple of resources which are for you, the grown-ups here, and then I've got one more which is for our young people, which I'm very excited to share with you. So let me just tell you a little bit about the resources that are in this kit that are actually more appropriate for the grown-ups. This is an NLP for Kids CD. So it's an audio CD so that you can pop it on in the background and listen to me saying the sorts of things I've been saying today, listening to me talking about the various different NLP techniques that we use with children, how to use them, where we use them, when it's appropriate, you know, a few little ideas about when and how they work. So you're going to hear about my most favorite NLP for Kids processes and the sorts of results that they help us to achieve in the work that we do. For you, as the person who is going to be leading this young person towards that sense of confidence and self-esteem and groundedness that we need them to have, it's going to give you confidence in doing that. You wouldn't believe how often a child's anxiety is affected by the anxiety of the adults around them. If you're worried about them worrying, if you're anxious about them getting anxious, it leaks out of you in completely unconscious ways, even when you think you're holding it in really well. Trust me, you're not. And when this is a parent-child situation, I swear to God, they pick this stuff up by telepathy or osmosis or something else. Some kind of weird magical parent-child connection happens where they're going to pick up on your feelings and your emotions. So you need to be in a good state, in a good headspace. You need to be feeling sure and certain to lead them towards that space of feeling sure and certain within themselves too. The other benefit of learning more about NLP for Kids techniques is going to get you curious, and that has two benefits. One is for you and one is for me. The benefit for you is that you're going to want to start learning more about who we are and what we do and why it is that it works so well. And you being in an attitude of curiosity is going to get you researching and finding ways forward so that you don't reach a point where you go, oh, well, we're just stuck with this. This is just the way they are. But instead, you're going to keep searching to find the right solutions, and that is a very good thing. The benefit for me is it means that hopefully at some point in the future, some of you might go on to work with NLP for Kids, either in becoming a practitioner or taking up and doing some of these other bits of online training and whatnot that we have to offer you. And that is a good thing, because the more people I have out there delivering this stuff, the better it is overall for the well-being and mental state of the young people that we are interacting with. If you're already an NLPer, it's going to refresh your skills. So it's going to get you thinking about, oh, this is a really good technique to use with young people. I just need to tweak it and do it like this in order for it to work with that age bracket. You're going to hear examples of when to deliver particular processes and potentially when not to as well. And the other resource that I have here for you grown-ups is Stop Anxiety and Grow Confidence, which is a book that some of you might have come across already. So this is a book that was written for parents and professionals 3 years ago, and it actually was developed off the back of a series of webinars which you can still access via our website. So it's a series of 4 webinars. One is about reducing anxiety, one is about growing confidence, one is about mental health and well-being in young people, and one is about communication skills. If you haven't either got the full set of those webinars or just the individual ones that sound of interest to you, then make sure you head over to the NLP for Kids product page, because if you found what I've said here interesting, you will absolutely love those webinars as well. So this is the book that basically came off the back of that webinar series. And what we're looking to achieve here is that we counteract anxiety by growing confidence. We're never going to get rid of anxiety because it exists in our minds, in our bodies, you know, within our repertoire of emotions for actually positive reasons. It's there to keep us safe. So for our young people, if they're ever, you know, getting frustrated with themselves because they have anxiety, sometimes an important conversation to have is the one where we say, well, this is just like any other emotion. This is like love, hate, happiness, sadness, all of those other different sorts of emotions that you experience. It's just one of those. The thing is that we only want it to show up at the times when it's appropriate and really serving to keep us safe in some way. You know, if you walk too closely to the edge of a cliff face, you want your anxiety to kick in because it's there to keep you safe and to get you to step back. But we don't need anxiety in lots of other scenarios where it might be showing up. And so that's where having more confidence can really start to reduce and shrink that anxiety. It also has the benefit of putting our focus on what we want rather than what we don't want. And I don't know about you, but if you've ever noticed that when you think about what you don't want, it seems to show up everywhere. So we want to avoid that happening. We want them thinking about the outcomes that they want to have instead. As I said, it is for parents and professionals, and it is developed to help adjust your attitude. So when you go through an attitudinal change, it will have that benefit of radiating from you and impacting on those other young people that are around you. It also teaches you, within this book, I give a special mention to the silent sufferers. There's a lot of young people out there, and actual adults as well, who are struggling with anxiety, who don't say anything, and they look like they are coping. And these are the ones that I really worry about, because these are the ones who end up potentially taking some kind of action, some self-harming type action, you know, some detrimental action to get us to notice. And you know, they give out that warning sign, and suddenly we are knocked sideways. We had no idea where that came from. So we need to be able to spot the silent sufferers so that we catch them before they do something which is potentially going to be quite harmful for them. The techniques in here are massively effective. Some of the techniques that are shared in this book have been used in our pilot study of how to reduce anxiety in children that was conducted by Our Healthy Future, who are statisticians that are based at Alder Hey Children's Hospital. So you'll be learning some of those effective techniques via the book. There'll be real life case studies in there so that you know that, you know, the stories that are told and the techniques that are used within those stories actually work in that way because they have been used in real life. And there is a bonus section on communication, which I think is a massive key to helping our young people overcome their high levels of anxiety that they're experiencing. All right, so final piece of equipment that goes into the Overcome Anxiety kit that I've been talking you through this evening. And that is something that is very precious to me, and it is called the Easy Button. This is an easy button. So the easy button is something that used to be sold and manufactured by Staples, so the office equipment store. Staples has long since gone, and as such, so have all the easy buttons. Now, when I first got started with NLP for Kids, I got me an easy button, and it works like this. You press the button, and I've got an example of it here for you so you can hear it.
That was easy.
That's it. It says that was easy. Now, the original easy buttons, that was all they did. You press the button and it said that was easy in a slightly American accent. And what I started to do was I started to take it on trainings, and I would do these big interventions with people, like change personal history interventions, where it would be incredibly emotional and heart-wrenching, and then we get to the end of it and they'd press the easy button. And so we'd just done this like colossal therapeutic intervention, and we'd wrap the whole thing up with
easy.
That was easy. And it started to gain significance in my trainings. So when I was going into schools and working with the young people there, we'd do our little workshop session, and sometimes they might have talked about, you know, quite challenging things in their families, or, you know, they've maybe shared some stuff that day. We'd get to the end of it, they'd all take it in turns to come up, press the easy button.
That was easy.
And say that was easy. And the kids loved the easy button. So when I started getting our NLP for Kids practitioners in schools, I made sure everybody had an easy button, and they'd all come back to me and say, oh my God, the easy button, everybody loves the easy button. I've had to hide the easy button and only bring it out at the end of the session so that they just get to press it at the end of the session, because otherwise they just want to sit there and press the easy button. And again, this is every single age group. This is not primary, this is every single age group. At the end of a day's training, I've been working with adults, I've got them all coming up, lining up to press the easy button. So I made sure all our practitioners had an easy button. And then one day, one of my practitioners said to me, Gemma, I'm gutted, my easy button has stopped working and I've put a new battery in, but it's dead. And Staples is now gone. There are no more easy buttons. I'm gutted. Like, this thing was it was like part of my therapeutic intervention was to include the easy button. Well, as it happened, he was in luck, because I was so invested in the easy button that after Staples went into administration, I didn't just buy a few easy buttons, I bought a crate load of them, and I had them shipped over from the United States. And tucked away in a lockup, I have an enormous box of easy buttons. And when we get a new NLP for Kids practitioner on board, they are very fortunate to get an easy button in their kit that they take with them into schools. But the easy buttons I have now don't just speak English. So can you see the little flags all around the edge of this easy button on the screen? That's because you can twist the button and make it speak in different languages. And in all of those languages, it simply says, that was easy, but it says it in that language. Now I'm going to give you a demo of what that sounds like, but let me just tell you some other bits and pieces about why the easy button works so well, in my opinion. So the first thing is, it minimizes dramas. So when we've had something big that we've gone through, something that we've talked about, we've had a rough day, and you come in at the end of that rough day and you offload and you talk about all of what happened, and then you go,
that was easy.
That was easy. it just shrinks it. It puts stuff back into perspective again. So I particularly like it for that reason. Now, with these international easy buttons, they are also incredibly funny, in my opinion, because when you hear that was easy being said in different languages, some of them just, you know, when you're hearing it in English and you don't understand that language, they sound really funny. And so our young people love these. And very often what I'll do as a bit of a sort of quick game at the end of my session is I'll say, right, you can choose a country, but whichever country you choose, you need to repeat back how it said that was easy. So it gets them, you know, you get children who've been completely silent throughout the entire workshop, and you're not sure if they're getting any value from things whatsoever, who suddenly then are going to speak up because they want to have a go with this easy button, and they're going to give it their best shot to recite what it is that they think that they've heard. This one is one of my personal favorites. This one I think is Germany.
Einfach easy.
I mean, can you say that? And it sounds, because with that one, it sounds a little bit like the word fart is in there. So that always gets a giggle as well. So there's all sorts of different countries and nations and nationalities on there, where we're basically just saying that was easy, but in a different language, and it's good fun. So it opens up our communication skills. If you've got someone who is anxious about opening up and talking, easy button is going to break your way through. Also, it relates to something in your brain called the reticular activating system. Now, I mentioned earlier, you get more of what you focus on. That is because of your reticular activating system. So what this does is this part of your brain works like a radar, so that whatever you think about and focus on, it brings that into your awareness. That will become your experience of the world. So if I say to you, wherever you are right now, look around the room and think to yourself, let's go with a colour that I think you might all have around you. Let's go with black. Look around and think black, 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 black. And what you'll notice is that your eyes get drawn to all of the stuff that's in the room around you and on your person that is the colour black. Your brain gets tuned into it, but your brain doesn't know whether thinking about that colour is good for you or bad for you. It just knows that you're thinking about it, so it's going to keep bringing it into your awareness. When we use the easy button, we create this affirmation of that was easy. And so that's what our reticular activating system begins to tune into, is that little voice saying, that was easy, or I felt easy, or tutili flashly, or whatever other language we might have programmed into it. It's going to give us that message of that was easy, so that our brain starts to gravitate towards that message instead of all of the negative dribs and drabs that we might use to describe our experience otherwise. It puts the problem in the past. And here's why. It's this word here, was. The word was puts it in the past. It's gone, it's over with, we're already moving forward. That was easy, and now it's gone. It creates a new narrative. You know, we're making a new story out of what was an old problematic situation. Now it's just become a that was easy scenario. And we've got the positive affirmation aspect of it here as well. Now, I am interested in positive affirmations because on one hand, I think they don't really do much. And on the other hand, I think there is definitely something in it. So the key thing is that for your positive affirmations to work, you obviously need to affirm them, and you need to get to a place where you start to believe it. Because when you start to believe it, that's when your affirmations really begin to work for you. If in the beginning your brain goes, liar, then obviously it's not going to work for you. But if we affirm it enough, then eventually it does start to become our reality for us to think that way. And that develops a whole new sense of self, which is quite wonderful. But as I mentioned, the easy button is no longer available. You can purchase them, but let me tell you about that. I did a search today on my old friend Google to see if it is possible to still get yourself an easy button. And this is the one that showed up. So you can buy yourself an Easy button. It will cost you £389.05 plus tax. Now, to be fair, that was the most expensive one that I found on eBay. The reality is there are some others on eBay that you can buy. If you are buying them in the UK, I think there was only one seller who had one in the whole of the UK, and you're looking at in the region of sort of £36. If you were to get, so some people have still got them in the States, if you were to get yourself one from the USA, most of them are, you then have to pay the tax, you're going to need to pay the import duty, but most of them are not shipping to the UK. The ones I found that are shipping to the UK are charging in the region of £27 for shipping for one Easy button, which is crazy, but you're in luck because I have a crate full of them. So here is the whole entire kit. As I said, this is the prototype. You are going to be the movers and shakers in getting your hands on this first version of the kit, and we will, of course, once we have, you know, more refined and beautiful version, give you access to that one too. So the realistic value of this, when we take into consideration getting one Easy button shipped over from the United States, is going to be in the region of around 45 quid. For you guys, because you have attended the webinar this evening and you've already paid £10 to be able to do that, we are offering you the whole entire kit for £35. If this is something that you think you could use some or all of these materials with a young person that you're currently interacting with, then here is where to go get it. So you're going to go to TinyCC. So in your browser, you literally just need to type in the tiny.cc/that was easy. All right, so I think I've got some questions, comments and whatnot, so let me see what you've got to say over here, because we are coming to the end of our webinar. So first off, first question from me to you is, was there something valuable for you in the webinar this evening? Did you either learn something, get reminded of something useful, or did it perhaps encourage you to come up with some other ideas of your own so that you can develop new methodologies from the existing ideas that I have shared with you there? Please let me know if you have found this webinar this evening helpful or valuable to you in some way. I would love to hear that from you now. In addition, if you've got any other comments or questions, please feel free to send those over so that I can address them before we wrap up the webinar for this evening. I will, of course, upload the recording. It may not come out to you until the tail end of tomorrow, so don't be alarmed if you don't see it in your inbox first thing in the morning. It just takes a little bit of time sometimes to get it uploaded to, downloaded from GoToWebinar, uploaded to YouTube and all of that jazz. All right. So what have we said? Yes, definitely. I really like the message from the past to the future self. Good. And I think it's a useful tool to bring into my therapy sessions. Yeah, go for it, Carissa. I still do that for myself even now. Like, I know that when I go back to Bulgaria next time, there's going to be a little note writing for me, because that's now what I do. And it actually, you know, it really feels like somebody cares about me. All right, what else have we got? The webinar was very helpful. I learned a lot. That is fabulous news. I'm glad to hear it. So we've still got about 4 minutes before I close the webinar down for this evening. So let me just give mention to another couple of things whilst I've got you all here. Feel free to fire over any other questions or comments whilst I'm still talking. We have got hypnotherapy for kids training taking place this Saturday until Tuesday. There is no home study involved in that, and it is an accredited training. So with this training, you will get certificated, and you get your manual, and you also get I want to say it's quite a big DVD set with this one. I think it's about 12 DVDs, possibly more, of the live training that you're actually going to be attending, so that you can recap anything that you see on the training. If you happen to have a moment of getting busy with your own thinking and not being in the moment, then you can use the DVDs to catch up again a little bit later. The cost of that training is £1,250 no, sorry, I'm lying. It's £2,500, including the VAT. And this one only takes place once a year. So if you miss this year's, then that one won't be happening again until next November. The next NLP for Kids silver level base in March, and you also get the free NLP practitioner training included with that one, which is a 7-day course and an additional certification. So in total, you do 11 days. The kids portion is an additional 4 days. With the NLP for Kids training, as of next year, everything prices are going up. So if it's something you're thinking about, then make sure you speak to someone in the office this year. Even if it's to do the training next year, then you can at least secure this year's prices. Using the idea of saying an affirmation out loud to receive a particular sticker with that affirmation is also a brilliant idea. Fabulous. I'm glad you like it. The entire kit is for £35. That is correct. Yep. So because realistically we're going to sell this for 45 quid, but you guys have already paid a tenner for your webinar, so we're giving it to you for 35. Obviously you're also getting the prototype, so I can't guarantee it will stay, sort of stay at the £45 region in the future. And my guess is that once I'm out of easy buttons, I may struggle to get another shipment from somewhere. But like for me, I'd buy it just for the easy button. I really would. But yes, if nothing else, then I really hope that there's been some good content for you on the webinar this evening, and that you'll take some of the ideas, even if it's not from our kit, but develop your own stuff and put some of this stuff into practice, because sometimes I think we go in all guns blazing. I always say to our practitioners, don't go in with the big guns too quickly. Those of you who know NLP, you know about the big processes. You know change personal history, you know parts integration, you know perceptual positions. Like, we've got all of these massive therapeutic techniques. And sometimes if you do the big stuff straight away and it doesn't work, either because you haven't got the rapport or they're not in the right headspace yet, then it's like now you've just gone and wasted your ACE card by throwing down, the big technique too soon. You can make massive, significant changes by doing a few low-level but important little things. So all of what I've shared with you today is simple, low-level stuff, but you'll be surprised at the enormous difference that it can make for your young people. All right, thank you so much. What's Caroline saying? I'm mostly interested in the CD and the book. Can these be purchased separately? Yes, indeed they can. Caroline, I know for sure the book is on our website on the products page. I'm not sure that the CD is. If it's not, give us a buzz at the office and I'll get someone to let you know how you can purchase that. But certainly the book, or you can get the book off Amazon actually as well. So you could just go straight to Amazon and get it there. But actually, no, go through our website, because I think then I get commission. I get commission for selling my own book. So go to the website, have a look and see what else is available on our products page, and also some of the webinars. For example, the webinars that we used in creating that book originally might be of interest to you if you haven't got those already. All right, thank you so much for watching and listening, everyone. It was a pleasure to speak to you as always, and we will be in touch very soon with details about upcoming webinars and things that may be of interest to you. All right, have a lovely evening, everyone. Take care now. Bye-bye.